Welcome to the Missing Dots, where history's most guarded secrets, political conspiracies, and forgotten truths are brought to light. We don't just tell stories, we execute deep, cold, forensic audits of the pivotal events that shaped our world. From ancient power struggles and fiscal realpolitik to suppressed archives and modern cover-ups, we strip away emotion, bias, and centuries of propaganda. If you are tired of surface-level narratives, biased debates, and dramatic myths, you have found your home. Subscribe now, step beyond the popular noise, and help us connect the hidden pieces of history to uncover the ultimate truth.
Thank you. It is really good to be sitting here with you today.
Yeah, same here. So I want to just jump right into this because I was thinking about how we look at history. I want you to imagine a piece of land that is so small, you could literally walk across the whole thing in, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 minutes.
Right. Just a tiny plot.
Exactly. A quiet little farm, just growing some dates and wheat. And then I want you to imagine that this exact same tiny piece of land almost tore an entire religion in half.
I mean, when you put it like that, it sounds completely absurd, but that is exactly what happened.
It really is.
Yeah. So we're looking at the year 11 AH. That is around 632 CE. And the prophet has just passed away.
And the whole community is just reeling from this.
Oh, entirely shattered. The people in Medina are grieving, and the political situation is just incredibly fragile. Suddenly they have to, figure out the reality of state administration without the man who actually built the state.
Right, the anchor is gone.
Exactly. And right in the absolute center of this tension is a legal dispute over this place called Fadak.
And see, whenever you hear people talk about Fadak today, it is always wrapped in these heavy, intense sectarian arguments.
Very emotional, very heavy.
Yeah, some people frame it as this grand, deliberate tyranny, like the theft of a whole empire. And then others just brush it off completely like it was, a tiny paperwork error that got blown out of proportion.
Which doesn't really help anyone understand what actually happened.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
So our goal today is to just mute all of that centuries-old noise. We're only going to look at the cold historical ledgers, the constitutional law of the time, and the actual literal agricultural facts on the ground.
I think that is really the only way to find any clarity here, because before we can even begin to understand why there was a legal dispute, we have to establish what Fadak actually was in physical reality.
Right. What was it actually producing?
Exactly. Because if you listen to the later historical myths, the poetry and the dramatic retellings, you would honestly walk away thinking Fadak was this endless, boundless treasure chest.
Like a sprawling empire of gold or something.
Right, like a Federal Reserve.
And when I actually looked at the geographical records, I was genuinely surprised. Because Fadak was just a Jewish inhabited agricultural oasis.
Very modest.
Yeah, geographically, it sat about 140 kilometers north of Medina. And back then, on a camel, that is roughly a 2 or maybe 3-day journey.
Yeah, 2 to 3 days in the heat.
So it was not some mythical kingdom. It was a working farm.
A very modest working farm. If we look at the archaeological and historical estimates we have, the entire area was about 10 to 30 hectares.
Which is really small.
It is. In the measurements they used at the time, that is roughly 200 to 300 jeribs. The land was fed by natural springs, which made it fertile enough to grow these high-quality arjwara dates, and they also grew some barley and wheat.
I actually pulled the fiscal ledgers from the early texts for this, and the annual yield from this farm was somewhere between 10,000 to 15,000 dirhams a year.
Right.
And just to translate that into something we can grasp today, based on the silver weight, we're talking about roughly 20,000 to 30,000 US dollars a year in revenue.
Yeah, that's a very fair modern estimate.
So we are talking about the equivalent of like a medium-sized modern community farm.
Exactly.
Which leads me to this huge question. Why does history treat a $30,000 date farm like it was the absolute center of the world's wealth?
Well, the importance of Fadak actually had nothing to do with its physical size or its financial yield. The tension comes entirely from how the land was acquired by the Muslims.
Oh, yeah.
Because the method of acquisition completely dictated its legal status under early Islamic law.
So because no blood was spilled, the legal classification of the land flips entirely.
Right.
Okay?
Hit the nail on the head.
It goes from being the soldier's reward to something else entirely. Because in the year 7 AH, after the Battle of Khaybar, the inhabitants of Fadak basically saw the direction the wind was blowing.
They did. They saw the outcome at Khaybar and decided to surrender peacefully.
They negotiated a treaty.
Right. There was no military siege, and that single detail is the hinge upon which this entire history turns, because no Muslim army fought for it.
Oh, okay.
The historical texts actually specifically note that, quote, neither horses nor camels were ridden against it, so it fell under a very strict Quranic category called fay.
Fay.
Yes. The rules for this are outlined clearly in Surah Al-Hajj, verses 6 and 7.
Wait, let me just pause you there. Make sure I have the terminology straight for everyone listening. We have to separate fay from ghanima.
Right. Two very different legal terms.
Because ghanima is what happens when swords are actually drawn, right? Like when an army fights and wins, like they did at Khaybar, the land and the wealth are considered military booty, ghanima.
Correct.
And that gets divided up among the soldiers who actually risk their lives on the battlefield.
That is the exact distinction. Ghanima is distributed privately to the individuals who fought, but fay is strictly state property.
Because there was no battle.
Exactly. Because there was no battle at Fadak, no individual soldier had a claim to it. It belongs to the state. And it is administered directly by the head of state, which at that time was the prophet.
So the prophet takes on the administration of Fadak. It basically becomes like an early version of a sovereign wealth fund.
That is a brilliant way to put it, actually, a public welfare trust.
Right, because he uses the revenue from those dates and that wheat for the public. The funds go toward diplomacy, buying military armor to defend Medina, providing relief for the poor, helping travelers.
All state responsibilities.
And, importantly, he's also using it to provide annual food stipends for his own family, the Banu Hashim.
Yes, and that last point is crucial for understanding the confusion that happens later. The Banu Hashim, the Prophet's extended family, were strictly forbidden from accepting regular charity.
Zakat.
Right, zakat. This was a protective measure to ensure the leader's family couldn't just enrich themselves off the alms of the poor.
That makes a lot of sense.
So because they couldn't take zakat, the Prophet used the revenue from this state trust, this fay, to ensure they had basic provisions to survive.
Just their basic needs.
Yes. But he did not own the land as a private citizen. He managed it as a public trust for the community, and his family were simply beneficiaries of that trust.
But look at it from a human perspective for a second. If my father pays for my family's groceries from a specific farm every single year of my life, I would naturally assume that farm belongs to him.
Of course you would.
Right. When he passes away, I'm going to expect that farm to pass down to me.
It is the most natural human assumption in the world. And that exact assumption is the catalyst for the crisis in 11 AH.
When the Prophet passes away.
Right. The shockwaves hit Medina. Abu Bakr is appointed as the new caliph, the new head of state. And on day one, he is tasked with figuring out how to manage the state treasury.
Which includes the public trust of Fadak.
Exactly.
And this is the moment Fatima, the daughter of the Prophet, steps forward and makes a claim on the land.
She does. And we have to look at her claim and Abu Bakr's response with complete legal detachment here.
Cold facts.
Yes, because Fatima's very first claim was not actually inheritance. She initially claimed that Fadak was a hiba.
Hiba meaning a gift, like given to her by the Prophet while he was still alive.
Yes. She stated that her father had gifted the property to her prior to his passing. Now, in early Islamic law, if a citizen claims that a piece of state property was transferred to them as a private gift, the state requires proof.
Right, they can't just take their word for it.
Exactly. Abu Bakr, acting strictly in his capacity as the state administrator, asks for legal witnesses to corroborate the gift.
But why was the witness standard so rigid back then?
Yeah.
I mean, we were talking about a society without digital banking or formal notarized title deeds printed on watermarked paper.
Well, human testimony was the entire foundation of the legal system. In a 7th century society, human witnesses were essentially the blockchain or the title deed of the era.
Wow, the blockchain of the era. I like that.
Right, because without a strict evidentiary standard, anyone could claim anything and the society would just collapse into corruption. The constitutional standard to prove a property transfer was very clear.
What was it?
You needed 2 male witnesses, or 1 male and 2 female witnesses.
Okay, so that was the absolute baseline.
Yes. And Fatima brought forward Ali and Aman.
Which is 1 man and 1 woman.
It falls short of the statutory requirement.
So it didn't meet the legal bar.
Right. And it has nothing to do with trusting or distrusting the character of the individuals involved. It is entirely about the rigid requirements of constitutional law.
It's just procedure.
Think of a modern Supreme Court judge. If someone brings them a case but misses the filing deadline by 1 day, the judge has to reject it.
Even if they know the person is right.
Exactly. It might seem pedantic or even heartless to the individual, but if the judge ignores the procedure, the integrity of the entire judicial system breaks down.
And Abu Bakr was in that exact position.
He was.
So the gift claim fails purely on procedural grounds. The legal standard wasn't met, so Fatima shifts her claim.
Yes. She then claims Fadak as her legal inheritance, her mirth. She is the Prophet's surviving daughter, so she asks for her rightful share of her father's estate.
This is where Abu Bakr cites a direct legal ruling, right?
Ah.
A hadith from the Prophet himself.
Yes. Abu Bakr tells her, quote, "We prophets do not leave inheritance. Whatever we leave is charity."
Meaning, whatever a prophet leaves behind remains a public trust for the community.
Exactly. It does not become private wealth for their heirs.
Now, I think a lot of people hear that and assume Abu Bakr just, conveniently pulled this rule out of thin air to block her, like it was just a quick political maneuver.
That is a very common assumption today.
But when you actually audit the historical records, this hadith wasn't a secret. The primary texts show this exact rule was known to Umar, to Uthman, to Ali himself.
Yes, and to the Prophet's uncle Al-Abbas, and to the Prophet's wife Aisha.
So it wasn't just Abu Bakr.
No, it was a widely established legal principle among the senior figures of the community. The theological reasoning behind it was that prophets leave behind knowledge, guidance, and public service.
Not material wealth.
Exactly, not material wealth to enrich their bloodlines.
I have to play devil's advocate here, though, because was Abu Bakr being unnecessarily rigid? Look at the context. Medina is grieving.
It is a traumatized city.
And Fatima is grieving deeply. Could he not have just made an exception for the daughter of the Prophet? Was an olive branch really impossible in this scenario?
I understand that feeling, but consider what happens if he says yes.
Right.
If Abu Bakr hands over state property without the statutory witnesses, or if he bypasses a direct prophetic directive simply because the claimant is the Prophet's daughter,
Then what?
he shatters the legal foundation of the new state on his very first day in office. The rule of law means absolutely nothing if it bends for the family of the ruler.
Wow. Yeah, if the president's family doesn't follow the law, no one will.
Exactly. That is the heavy burden of statecraft.
And if we want to know if Abu Bakr was somehow, targeting Fatima maliciously, we have to look at how he treated everyone else in the family.
Yeah.
Because she wasn't the only one denied an inheritance.
No, she wasn't. The non-inheritance rule was applied uniformly without a single exception.
Aisha and Hafsa, who were the Prophet's widows, and let's not forget, Aisha is Abu Bakr's own daughter. They came forward, and they received absolutely no material inheritance from the lands.
Nothing.
Abbas, the Prophet's uncle, received no inheritance. Abu Bakr applied the exact same rigid law to his own daughter as he did to Fatima.
It was a blanket administrative policy affecting everyone. But having established the cold legal reality, we really also have to acknowledge the human reality of this moment.
We do.
Because Fatima's reaction to this legal decision was one of intense anger and withdrawal. She actually stopped speaking to Abu Bakr.
SubhanAllah. When you really put yourself in her shoes and think about what she was going through, we have to view her reaction through the lens of profound, acute bereavement.
Definitely.
She had just lost her father.
Yeah.
And he wasn't just a father, he was the messenger of God. He was the spiritual, emotional, and political anchor of her entire world.
This shock to her system must have been unimaginably heavy.
Right, it was a massive trauma.
The psychological weight of that loss just cannot be overstated. And to immediately face a rigid, inflexible legal wall regarding her family's basic provisions, it is entirely understandable that she felt a deep personal grievance.
The pain was very real.
Yes. She passed away just 6 months after her father.
I think this is a really crucial point. We can completely validate Fatima's immense, natural human grief without needing to frame the event as a grand political conspiracy.
Right, it doesn't have to be a conspiracy.
It is a deeply human story of loss. She is mourning, and the newly formed state is desperately trying to survive its first transition of power without collapsing.
And those two realities just violently collided.
Yeah. But if we separate that human grief from the political administration, the ultimate proof of the law comes years later, doesn't it? When the balance of power shifts completely.
Exactly. We can test the legal theory by looking at what happened when the opposing side gained total control.
So let's fast forward a few decades. Ali ibn Abi Talib becomes the fourth caliph. He moves the capital to Kufa. He's the commander of the faithful. He has total, absolute authority over the Islamic State. including the treasury.
He is the supreme executive power. There is no Abu Bakr or Umar around to oppose him.
Yet, when Ali takes power, he does not return Fadak to his own sons, Hassan and Hussein.
He does not.
He does not carve out this farm and hand it back to his family as private property. He continues to administer Fadak exactly as Abu Bakr and Umar did.
As a public state trust, a fay.
He maintains the exact same administrative protocol. The revenues continue to go to the poor, to travelers, and to the state's military needs. He didn't change a single thing about its classification.
No, he didn't.
But if Fadak was truly stolen through tyranny, if it was an illegal usurpation of Fatima's divine right, wouldn't Ali have returned it the absolute second he had the power to do so?
You would certainly think so.
Because Ali was famous for his absolute, uncompromising commitment to justice. The fact that he didn't return it has to mean he fundamentally agreed with the constitutional law of the state trust.
It is arguably the strongest forensic evidence we have. It proves that Ali recognized the legal precedent set by Abu Bakr in 11 AH was technically and legally correct.
Right.
It was not a personal attack on his family. It was the proper constitutional management of a phase asset. Ali's continuation of the policy demonstrates that the early community, despite their personal frictions and grief, was acting on legal principle, not personal malice.
So, if the ledgers show it was a modest farm,
And
the laws show it was a state trust, and even Ali agreed with the legal reality of it.
yes.
How do we end up here? Why does a modern reader hear such dramatic, polarizing, and cosmic versions of this story today? How do we get from a quiet agricultural trust to a massive sectarian war?
Well, that requires looking at the historiography, how the history was actually written over time.
Okay, take us through that.
When you read the earliest historical records from the 1st and 2nd centuries, historians like Ibn Sa'd or the very early layers of Al-Balaturi, they treat this entire event as a dry, modest, legal, and administrative disagreement.
Just paperwork, basically.
Exactly. It is presented simply as a matter of property classification, witness requirements, and estate law.
A mundane constitutional debate.
But then time passes. Centuries later, during the Abbasid, Buyid, and Safavid dynasties, the narrative completely mutates. Political polemicists and state-sponsored historians took this localized property dispute and just weaponized it.
But why? What did they stand to gain by changing the story of a date farm?
They needed to justify their own empires and delegitimize their political rivals.
Oh, I see.
If you are a later dynasty trying to claim divine authority over the Muslim world, you need a powerful founding myth.
You need a villain and a hero.
Precisely. A dry legal debate over whether a modest farm requires 2 male witnesses doesn't inspire armies or rally peasants to your banner, but a story about the cosmic oppression of the prophet's family.
Yeah, that gets people moving.
Right. A story about the theft of a massive divine birthright. That rallies troops.
So they basically ran a historical exaggeration factory. They painted over a simple canvas with heavy, dramatic colors.
They inflated the wealth of Fadak to absurd proportions. Suddenly, in the later texts, it went from producing 10,000 dirhams to 70,000 or even 100,000 dinars.
Which is an astronomical sum.
Completely unrealistic for that piece of land. They also invented dramatic, elaborate courtroom speeches that simply do not exist in the earliest historical layers.
Wow.
They transformed a quiet administrative debate into a cosmic theological battle between absolute good and absolute evil.
They obscured the calm, principled reality of the early Muslims just to build the foundations of their own empires. They took human grief and turned it into a political weapon.
And that exaggeration factory has been running for centuries. It feeds the surface-level narratives we see today.
The ones that everyone argues about online.
Right, narratives that entirely ignore the legal, agricultural, and fiscal realities we have just been talking about. When you strip away the Abbasid and Safavid propaganda, you are just left with a 30-hectare farm and a tragic but principled legal ruling.
It really makes you stop and think. For you listening, think about how much of the history we consume daily is actually written by empires hundreds of years after the fact.
It's staggering when you realize it.
If a simple, principled legal dispute over a modest state farm can be transformed into a cosmic war of good and evil, what other historical events in our minds are just constitutional debates hiding inside political myths?
It is a profound question to walk away with. Once you start looking for the missing dots, you realize how much of the past has been rewritten simply to control the present.
So true. Anyway, to rebuild your mental peace and legacy today, give charity, sponsor a student, and plant a tree. May Allah grant us success. Don't forget to Avandi. Come on, let's go. Don't forget to follow this channel, The Missing Dots. Thank you.